Picture a $6.4 billion bridge. Every cable gleaming, every toll booth wired and ready, the pavement still fresh, and 0 cars on it because concrete barriers are blocking the entrance. Not a construction delay, a finished bridge deliberately closed. Call it the world's most expensive skateboard park. I'm Bo Kaufman, and this is the Sanity Project. Last time, we traced how Canada built the Gordie Howe Bridge and still needed Washington's permission to open it. Today we ask the question that follows. What would it actually have cost to leave it shut? There's a number floating around, $7 million a week, and it comes with a very important asterisk nobody seems to mention when they repeat it. There's a truck driver hours problem buried in the fine print. And there's a single, century-old bridge quietly carrying almost a third of all trade between two countries, which should probably worry you more than it does. Let's get into it.
I want you to just try and picture something for me for a second.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Imagine a brand new, state-of-the-art, $6.4 billion bridge spanning the Detroit River.
Right. Massive piece of infrastructure.
Massive. And it is completely finished. I mean, the pavement is fresh, the suspension cables are gleaming in the sun, the toll booths are powered up, ready to go. But there is zero traffic.
Not at all.
None. Instead, you have these massive concrete barriers completely blocking off the entrance. Nobody is allowed across. It is essentially, the world's most expensive, heavily guarded skateboard park.
Yeah, it is a genuinely surreal image to conjure up. And the wild part is that wasn't just some hypothetical thought experiment.
No, it wasn't.
That was the very real, very imminent scenario sitting on the negotiating table earlier this year.
It's crazy to think about. But anyway, welcome to this deep dive. Today we're digging into part 2 of a massive investigative editorial arc from the Sanity Project.
Right, the research led by Rachel Bennett.
Exactly, Rachel Bennett, with some truly eye-opening analysis from Michael Reeves. And our mission today is to answer one fundamental, multi-billion-dollar counterfactual question.
Which is what exactly Canada would have lost if the Gordie Howe International Bridge had been completely finished, but the U.S. and Canada simply, failed to reach a deal to actually open the doors.
Right, because a bridge can be structurally sound, physically complete, entirely paid for, and yet politically closed.
Totally. But before we get into the mechanisms of how that happens, we really should lay down some ground rules for this discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
Because this is strictly an economic analysis. I mean, the source material here isn't interested in partisan talking points or, debating the political morality of the administrations involved.
We're not taking sides here.
Right. We are looking coldly and objectively at the sheer financial reality of a no-deal scenario.
And right up front, I want you, the listener, to engage with us on this. Like, if you're listening on an app that lets you leave a comment, or if you're on our page, drop a comment, or letting us know where you stand as we unpack these numbers.
Yeah, it's a fascinating hypothetical to put yourself into.
Ask yourself, if it were your tax dollars, like your $6.4 billion, would you have accepted the new U.S. demands to get this bridge open, or would you have held out for the original terms and just let it sit empty?
It's a tough call.
It really is. So to understand the cost of this bridge potentially sitting idle, we have to understand the trap that was set years ago.
Yeah.
And, I have to admit, looking at the origins of this, I'm finding it hard not to see just a massive blunder.
You mean the 2012 agreement?
Yeah. If I'm a Canadian taxpayer, I'm looking back at the Canadian government in 2012 and thinking they completely dropped the ball. How do you build an international bridge without getting the foreign federal government to legally guarantee they will open their side of the border?
Well, it looks like a glaring oversight in hindsight, sure, but calling it a blunder kind of ignores the structural reality of American politics.
How so?
The 2012 Canada-Michigan Crossing Agreement was actually a deeply pragmatic, almost desperate workaround. We really have to separate the state level from the federal level here.
Right, because Canada was negotiating with the state of Michigan, not Washington.
Exactly. Michigan desperately needed this infrastructure for their auto industry, but they politically and financially could not put up the capital to build it.
So Canada steps in and says, fine, we will finance the whole thing.
Which they did.
Land acquisition on the American side, building the massive highway interchange connecting the bridge to Interstate 75 in Detroit, the physical bridge itself.
All of it.
The current cost sits at about 6.4 billion Canadian dollars. And the mechanism to get that money back was supposed to be a closed loop, right?
Yeah.
Canada collects the tolls on the Canadian side until the debt is paid off.
Yeah, that was the financial engine. And the 2012 agreement solved the how of pouring the concrete. It successfully established a joint ownership structure between Canada and Michigan.
Okay, let's unpack this, though, because Michigan is just a state.
Right. The governor of Michigan does not command United States Customs and Border Protection.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the state legislature doesn't fund federal Homeland Security agents,
Okay, this sounds like paying to build a massive, beautiful driveway for your house.
and laying down all the expensive trick work.
Yes, only to realize your neighbor legally controls the curb cut connecting it to the street. Like, you own the driveway, but they own the access.
That is a perfect analogy.
Uh-huh.
The 2012 framework created the legal structure to build the crossing, but it fundamentally lacked the authority to operate it. It basically left a massive backdoor for future U.S. federal leverage.
Because without customs agents, you're stuck.
Exactly. You can build the most advanced customs plaza in the world on the Detroit side, but if Washington refuses to allocate the federal agents to sit in those booths and process the trucks, the bridge is just a concrete monument.
Right. And in 2026, the Trump administration recognized that leverage. They threatened to delay or outright block the federal certifications necessary to open the bridge unless the United States received a greater economic stake in the project.
Which brings us directly to the core of Bennett and Reeves' counterfactual. The leverage is applied. Washington wants a piece of the pie. What happens to the Canadian economy if the government just says no and walks away from the table?
Right, if they just refuse the deal. To answer that, we have to define what a no-deal scenario actually looks like on the ground. Because, and this is important, it doesn't mean a brick wall goes up across the entire border.
No, not at all. And that is the most common misconception. A failure to open the Gordie Howe Bridge does not mean all cross-border trade suddenly evaporates.
Because we still have the old routes.
Exactly. The existing infrastructure, specifically the Ambassador Bridge and the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, would remain entirely operational. Trucks would still move, parts would still cross.
So what's the problem then?
The true economic damage is found in the margins. It's the lost additional capacity, the absence of redundancy, and the brutal carrying costs of a stranded asset.
Let's drill down into those carrying costs, because this is where the numbers get scary. The toll booths are empty, but you can't just, turn off the lights, lock the gates, and walk away from a $6.4 billion piece of critical infrastructure.
Definitely not. What Canada is physically paying for while this bridge sits in political purgatory is massive.
What are they paying for exactly?
Yeah, you are dealing with a financial ticking clock known as a public-private partnership, or P3 model. Canada didn't just write a single check from the Treasury, right? They partnered with a private consortium to design, build, finance, and operate the bridge. And those private investors and bondholders, they expect their debt to be serviced. The entire financial model assumed that by late 2025 or mid-2026, toll revenues would begin flowing in to start paying down those massive capital costs.
But with the barriers up, that revenue stream is zero. Yet the debt servicing doesn't just, pause for diplomatic negotiations.
No, the financial obligations march on regardless.
Right.
And beyond the debt, just the physical reality of maintaining a ghost bridge is staggering.
Because it's still a physical structure in the elements.
Right. You have a massive, complex facility spanning an international waterway. You are paying for continuous electricity to keep the systems, sensors, and lighting operational.
Wow, yeah.
You're paying astronomical insurance premiums for a multi-billion-dollar asset. You have to conduct physical anti-degradation maintenance so the fresh infrastructure doesn't start rotting before it even opens.
That's crazy. And I assume you still need a human presence, right? You can't just leave it abandoned.
Oh, absolutely. You need 24/7 security to patrol empty asphalt to prevent vandalism or security breaches. And even more costly, you have to keep highly trained operations and maintenance staff on payroll, or at least on paid standby.
Wait, really? Just paying them to wait around?
Yeah, because in international diplomacy, a breakthrough could happen at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. If Washington suddenly agrees to terms, you're expected to open the bridge immediately. You cannot fire your entire operational staff and expect to rehire and retrain them overnight.
The numbers attached to this in the source material are sobering. The Anderson Economic Group, or AEG, they published an estimate that made serious waves. They pegged the delay-related costs of a closed bridge at approximately $7 million per week.
Right, but we need to put a very strict, very clear boundary around that specific figure.
Yes, let's clarify that.
The AEG breakdown estimated roughly $5 million a week in lost toll revenue that the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority should have been collecting, plus another $2 million a week connected to ongoing taxpayer and customs plaza costs.
And if we just do some simple math on that, $7 million a week multiplied by 52 weeks, you are staring down an annualized burn rate of $364 million. That is a breathtaking amount of money to lose every single year on a closed bridge.
is a massive figure, which is why the caveat in the research is so vital. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority explicitly stated they were not involved in that ADG study.
They didn't verify it.
Exactly. They have not independently verified that methodology. So anytime you hear that $364 million annual figure, it must be understood as a simple mathematical extrapolation based on third-party estimates, not an official government forecast.
That is a crucial distinction. But, even if the real number fluctuates, the underlying mechanism is undeniable. Canada is bleeding millions in carrying costs to maintain a stranded asset while collecting zero tolls to offset the debt. Okay, so that covers the direct financial drain. But here is where it gets really interesting, because the research points to a much wider, more insidious economic impact. We know the old bridges are still open. So how does this bottleneck penalty actually hurt the listener's wallet or the regional economy?
The bottleneck penalty is all about the difference between lost trade and lost efficiency. The trucks are still crossing the border, sure, but they're doing so on aging overcapacity infrastructure.
Meaning delays.
Right, which means businesses are forced to absorb the cost of wasted time, wasted fuel, and unpredictable labor schedules.
The numbers from the Cross-Border Institute at the University of Windsor really put this into perspective. They projected that the new bridge, with its direct freeway-to-freeway connections, would save approximately 850,000 truck driver hours per year compared to the existing routes.
Just think about that. 850,000 hours of specialized labor sitting idle in traffic queues. In the logistics world, time isn't just money, time is survival. And this specific border crossing, the Windsor-Detroit corridor, it's the absolute lifeblood of the North American automotive manufacturing industry.
I want to pause on that because the sources talk a lot about just-in-time supply chains. For anyone who doesn't work in logistics, how does that actually function day to day, and why does a bridge delay threaten to break the whole system?
Well, modern auto plants do not have massive warehouses filled with months' worth of parts. It's just too expensive to store them.
Right.
Instead, they rely on this highly choreographed dance where the highway itself is essentially the warehouse. A stamping plant in Ontario might produce a specific door panel that is scheduled to be installed on a vehicle at an assembly line in Michigan just a few hours later.
So the parts are arriving literally just in time to be bolted onto the car.
Precisely. An assembly plant might coordinate over 1,000 highly specific truck deliveries every single day. If a truck gets caught in a bottleneck at the Ambassador Bridge and misses its 15-minute delivery window, the assembly line starves.
Oh, wow.
And if a major auto plant shuts down its line because your truck was late, the logistical penalties levied against the supplier can run into the thousands of dollars per minute.
Wait, thousands of dollars a minute? So if you are a trekking company and you know the old bridge is unpredictable, how do you protect yourself from those catastrophic fines?
You build in buffer times? If a route should take 2 hours, you schedule the driver to leave 4 hours early, just in case there's a backup at the border.
But what if there isn't a backup?
Then your driver and your truck arrive early and sit idle in a parking lot in Michigan for 2 hours waiting for their delivery slot. Buffer time is really just a polite industry term for deliberate, baked-in inefficiency. You are tying up trucks and drivers that could be moving other freight simply to mitigate the unreliability of the border crossing.
And that inefficiency ripples outward. It's not just car parts. The sources highlight the agricultural sector, where an extra 2 hours in the sun means actual spoilage of fresh produce.
Oh, absolutely.
It hits the tourism sector across Ontario and Michigan, too. Like if a family is deciding whether to cross the border for a weekend trip to a baseball game or a festival, the prospect of a 2-hour delay at a congested tunnel is often enough to make them cancel the trip entirely.
Which brings us to the most existential risk highlighted in the analysis, which is redundancy. The Ambassador Bridge is a private asset that is nearly a century old, and it currently handles roughly 30% of all Canada-US trade transported by truck.
That is a terrifying single point of failure.
It is a massive vulnerability. If a structural anomaly, a severe weather event, or a major accident were to force the extended closure of the Ambassador Bridge, the economic fallout would be immediate.
Where would all those trucks go?
All that commercial traffic would have to detour hours north to the Blue Water Bridge in Sarnia, which would instantly buckle under the volume and become a multi-day parking lot.
Which means the Gordie Howe Bridge is essentially an insurance policy against that exact nightmare scenario.
Exactly.
The Cross-Border Institute actually put a number on it, estimating the value of having a redundant, heavy-duty crossing option at Detroit at roughly $8.4 billion over 40 years.
But, an insurance policy is completely worthless if you aren't allowed to use it when disaster strikes. A finished but closed Gordie Howe Bridge provides zero supply chain resilience.
Okay, so let's synthesize this. What does this all mean? We have Canada bleeding millions in direct carrying costs. We have zero toll revenue coming in to pay down a $6.4 billion debt. We have an economy losing 850,000 hours of trucking efficiency every year and operating without a safety net for its most vital trade corridor.
Yeah, that is the pressure cooker that Canada was sitting in during the summer of 2026. They were forced to weigh two distinct risks at the negotiating table.
Right, option A versus option B.
Yeah, and understanding this choice is really a masterclass in geopolitical leverage and this sunk cost fallacy. Let's look at the actual terms of the agreement in principle that was struck to finally secure the opening of the bridge for July 27, 2026.
Because Canada had to make a significant, painful concession that was totally outside the original 2012 framework.
They did. They had to give up a massive chunk of the revenue. Canada agreed to share 50% of the net bridge and crossing-related revenues for the first 15 fiscal years of operation.
And that money doesn't just go into the general U.S. Treasury, right? It's directed into a newly established United States-Canada Economic Development Fund, which is solely controlled and allocated by the U.S. government.
Right. And beyond the financial hit, Canada also surrendered a degree of operational sovereignty. They agreed to a governance structure that gives the U.S. limited consent rights over specific toll adjustments.
How does that work?
For instance, if Canada attempts to raise tolls by more than 10% in a given year, and that increase puts the tolls above the regional average for other crossings, they are legally required to seek U.S. consent.
Okay, let's weigh the choices impartially here. If we look at option A, Canada rejects the New Deal. They say, we paid for it, we own the tolls, we aren't giving up a dime.
So in option A, Canada preserves its flawless 2012 contract. On paper, they retain 100% of the revenue structure and total sovereignty over the toll booths.
Right.
But in reality, they are left holding a completely non-operational stranded asset indefinitely. They continue to bleed, carrying costs. They delay any meaningful debt repayment because 100% of zero tolls is still zero, and the regional economy continues to suffer the bottleneck penalty and the lack of redundancy.
It's essentially a choice between holding onto a flawless contract for a closed bridge or paying a premium to actually turn the key in the ignition.
Exactly, which brings us to option B. Option B is accepting the harsh reality of the leverage. Canada sacrifices a massive portion of its early net revenue and yields some of its tolling sovereignty to Washington. But the physical barriers are removed. The bridge opens.
You can actually use it.
Right. They finally start collecting the remaining 50% of the tolls to begin paying down that $6.4 billion investment. And they unleash the massive economic value of reduced congestion and supply chain efficiency for industries across the continent.
It really reframes the entire narrative, doesn't it? I mean, it is so easy to read a headline that screams, Canada surrenders 50% of bridge revenue, and just feel outraged. But physical ownership of an asset means absolutely nothing if you don't have operational sovereignty.
The verdict from Bennett and Reeves' investigative analysis is unavoidable. A no-deal scenario would not have destroyed the Canada-U.S. trading relationship overnight.
No.
But it would have imposed a severe, measurable, and compounding economic penalty on Canada while indefinitely delaying the massive logistical benefits of a bridge they had already sacrificed so much to build.
Half a loaf is better than an empty, multi-billion-dollar driveway.
Well said.
And that brings us back to you, the listener. We asked you at the start, and we want to know now that you have the full picture. Head over to your app, hit subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment. Would you have swallowed your pride and taken option B to get the bridge open, or would you have chosen option A and held out on principle?
It's a great question. And if you want to dive into the incredibly detailed math and the full investigative research by Rachel Bennett and Michael Reeves, you really must go to thesanity.org and read the original piece.
Yes, highly recommend it.
And that comprehensive research sets up the final installment of this editorial arc perfectly. In part 3, we're going to zoom out from the Gordie Howe Bridge specifically and look at the broader, honestly, somewhat chilling question of Canadian sovereignty.
Right.
What exactly should Canada demand the next time it attempts to build major infrastructure that inherently relies on another country's political permission to operate?
It is a massive, incredibly complex question about the future of international trade. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over until our next deep dive.
Sure.
Think back to that opening image. A gleaming $6.4 billion bridge, completely finished, but held hostage by the simple need for federal customs agents at the finish line.
Right.
How many other critical international infrastructure projects, pipelines, power grids, fiber optic transit links, are currently sitting on similar hidden diplomatic fault lines, completely unknown to the taxpayers who are funding them? Think about that next time you cross a border. We'll see you next time.
In the end, it came down to a question worth asking yourself. Is a flawless contract for a bridge nobody can cross worth more than an imperfect deal that actually opens the gate? Half a loaf or an empty driveway? If that question sticks with you, subscribe to the Sanity Project and tell us which one you'd have chosen. See you next time.
If you want more facts and less fear, hit subscribe. Check out the next breakdown wherever you're listening or watching. Stay sane, Canada.